Okay, Assalamu alaikum. Alhamdulillah, salatu salam ala rasulillah. Ma ba'd. We're now halfway through of Umdah al-Ahkam. We stopped at Sifat Salah. What's the meaning of Sifat Salah? What does that mean? The description of the prayer of the Prophet ﷺ. And that we said when we were looking at this, when we were actually studying it, different scholars have different interpretations on how the Prophet ﷺ prayed. So we have some narrations which are agreed upon, but here we're not talking about, and some of the, see now, when you have difference of opinion between the scholars, we're talking about, number one, the grading, and number two, the understanding. So you could have something that they both agree are sahih or hasan or acceptable, but the understanding might be different. Or it could be that they give precedence to something over another. Or, the worst case scenario, they will say that something is abrogated. And this is known in the Sharia as the qawaid of tarjih. Qawaid tarjih. Now, it might sound a bit complicated, but in a scenario where you don't know what is the correct opinion, what the Muslim will do, and he's got something which he thinks is contradictory, that one narration is telling him to do one thing and another narration is telling him to do another. And this is exactly what we would do at some level as well, but at the same time we would need to ask the scholar to make sure that our understanding is correct. So the qawaid of tarjih. So now how, let me put this in English, qawaid of tarjih. Qawaid refers to principles and tarjih means how do you know that this is the right opinion. So now the ulama completely agree that the Prophet ﷺ has said, pray as you have seen me pray. But you've got 4 different madhahib. In actual fact, you've got more than 4 different madhahib which talk about how the Prophet ﷺ prayed. So it could be that they differed on the authenticity of the narration. So one group of scholars will say that hadith is weak and they will not accept it. And a perfect example of that are some of the scholars saying that you should put your hands below your navel. The majority of the scholars say that that narration is weak. So that's an example of that. Another group of scholars will say, okay, they're all authentic, but the understanding differs. So now, all the scholars are agreed that it's hadith sahih, but the understanding differs. So for example, the Prophet ﷺ said, don't go down like a camel goes down. Some say that means don't go down on your hands. Some say that means don't go down on your knees. But they didn't disagree on the authenticity. They've differed on its understanding. Now, if a scholar finds a hadith and he says sahih, and he looks at both understanding and he's saying, oh, this one's strong and this one's strong. What he does now, on the third stage, so what he has to do is first he has to look at the authenticity. This is the actual order of it as well. You look at the authenticity. If it's not sahih, then it's rejected. If it is sahih, then we say, what is the understanding? If you've got the authenticity and then the understanding, but you're still not clear, then what he does is he gives what he thinks is the rajih. And this is known as the preference. So he will say, okay, well there is a contradictory opinion to this, there is a difference of opinion on this, but I'm giving precedence to this view. So then there is precedence. And then the worst case scenario, and this is absolute worst case, the ulama are agreed that we cannot abrogate something. We cannot say something is abrogated unless you've got dalil to say it's abrogated, because what you'll be doing then is you'll be rejecting the sunnah. You'll be rejecting narrations that have come to you. So abrogation has conditions in itself, but this would be that worst case scenario. So some of the ulama have said that, for example, the Prophet ﷺ sitting down to pray, when he led the people in prayer, is abrogated because towards the end of his life he only did it when there was a need. If there is no need, then it should be somebody who is standing like Abu Bakr. Prophet appointed Abu Bakr. So now they've said that is an abrogation. But other ulama say no. It's authentic, but there is a way of reconciling. Let's go to step 2. You get the point? You sure?
What does qawaid tarjih mean?
Qawaid are the principles. So these are the principles of finding the correct view. Or tarjih means, the correct view. So this is the order. First off, is the hadith sahih? Secondly, do we have the correct understanding? Thirdly, do we need to give precedence to something over something else because it's more authentic, or more companions have narrated it, or the companions themselves have done it? So for example, one of the arguments of those scholars who say that you should go down on your knees first and not your hands is that the Prophet ﷺ has been described by Wa'il ibn Hujr that he went down on his knees. And the ulama are generally in agreement that his description, Wa'il, is given precedence to, because this is how he continually described that the Prophet ﷺ salah was. The other group of scholars say, no, you go on your hands first. And this is in Bukhari, so now they're going to the authenticity. They say Bukhari is more stronger than Abu Dawood. You see now the difference. Now the counter opinion from this side now, they will say, no, this narration in Bukhari, going to step 2, so they'll say, yeah, that is correct. Going on your hands is correct. Going on your knees is correct, but what's the understanding? How can we reconcile? So they've said that that's the action of Ibn Umar, not the action of the Prophet ﷺ in Bukhari. And what they've said is permissible for you to go on your hands, because Ibn Umar is explaining what he saw from the Prophet ﷺ. But Wa'il ibn Hujr is talking about how the Prophet ﷺ prayed continually and habitually. Now, what it comes to now to stage number 3, giving precedence and preference, that's when we look at also the understanding from the Salaf and the practice of the Salaf also. Umar himself, Ibn Umar's father, used to go down on his knees first. And this is in Bayhaqi and Sahih. So this is the point. So now, this is how you will get that side. There's obviously a counter-argument. I'm just giving you one side of the argument. But this is the process that they've gone through to saying, okay, this is the correct opinion, when they got all of the text together. So then that's why you will find differences of opinion, even though there are narrations here, like in Bukhari and Muslim. You might think, wait a minute, but then one sheikh says something, another sheikh says something else, and they've not followed what's in Bukhari and Muslim, or they follow Bukhari and Muslim, but they still have differences of opinion, is because what you have on that board. Yeah.
I think you said once in the show of walking to the masjid, the Prophet ﷺ, did he do one way whilst he was younger, than when he was older he did it the other way?
About going in his hands, yeah, some of the ulama have said that if there is a need for you to go down on your hands rather than your knees, once you're older, then that's fine. But I think that's more to do with jalsat al-istiraha, I think, maybe. When he used to sit before he used to get up. Hadith number 9130, Abu Hurairah, that the Messenger of Allah used to make takbir for every salat, and then he would be silent for a little while, and then he would start to recite. So Abu Hurairah asked the Prophet ﷺ, what do you say in that moment of silence? And then he taught him this dua, Allahumma ba'id bayni wa bayni khatayaya kama ba'adtu bayna al-mashriqi wal-maghrib. And also we know from other narrations that the Prophet ﷺ said other stuff like Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, and he used to say Allahu Akbar kabira, alhamdulillah kathira, subhanallah bukratan wa asira. And there's other narrations of things that he used to say in the beginning of the salah. And you'll find that in Hisnul Muslim also. What we learn from this, hadith number 90, that this is a sifr salah. This is the first thing that he used to do, which is the takbir. And then he used to do something which is sunnah, which is this bit here. And then after that, we're still learning from this one narration, the sifr salah. After that, he started to recite. What did he used to recite? Hadith number 91 teaches us. So what he did in the beginning, Sifr Salah, Allahu Akbar. Quiet. What was he doing when he was quiet? Abu Hurairah asked that question and we got the answer. Then he used to begin reciting. Abu Hurairah described to us. But the next narration of Aisha is teaching us what he used to recite, which was the Fatiha. Praise be to Allah, the Lord of all creation. And then he used to make ruku'. So that's the first pillar. And the second pillar, the Takbir al-Ihram. The second pillar is which is to stand, and then the third pillar is which is the Fatiha. Then he went into the fourth pillar, which is the ruku', and he would be balanced in it, and his back and his head used to be level. None of it used to be dipping, not his head up, not his back up. All of it was flat. And then he used to stand back upright, and then he used to go into prostration. Then he used to sit upright, and he used to do this throughout his salah. That's the sifr salah. And he used to sit in tashahhud every 2 units. And he used to sit in iftirash position. What's the iftirash position? So you're sitting on the left with your right up. You're sitting on the left with your right up. Then he would conclude his prayers with the taslim. And he forbade the uqba position. What's the uqba position? Okay, so now we looked at the difference of opinion. Now here, uqba is either that you're sitting on your heels, so you're sitting on both of your heels. That could be one. Now we're talking about sitting, we're not talking about resting. The majority of the ulama have said that the Prophet ﷺ, again the hadith of Wa'il, is that when he used to come up from the sujood, he used to rest on his heels and then push himself up. Not the jalsat al-istirah. That's what he used to do when he used to be in the habitual state of normal prayer. But when he got older, he used to have the jalsa. So this uqba position is in sitting and not in resting. So to sit in that manner is disliked. He used to prohibit it. Or that your heels and your legs are apart and your backside is on the floor. Or that you are sitting on your heels, leaning forward, with your hands on the ground, in front of you or on the side of you, like a wild animal, like a fox would sit. And he used to prohibit us making prostration like a wild animal. What does that mean?
Laying your forearms on the ground.
Laying your forearms on the ground, fine, okay. And also stretching yourself out too much in sujood. So he's telling us in all of these positions. So now what we have learned is these pillars. What we've also learned from this uqba and the prohibition of being like a wild animal is that the Prophet ﷺ is teaching us that we're supposed to be balanced in our positions. Balanced. Hadith number 92, authority Ibn Umar, that the Prophet ﷺ used to raise his hands to his shoulders when he used to start. That's the first raising of the hands. The second raising of the hands before the ruku'. And the third raising of the hands after the ruku', when he used to say Sami Allahu liman hamida. And he wouldn't raise his hands in sujood, in the sitting position. Yeah. Okay? And we also learn from another narration is that he used to raise it after the first tashahhud. So again, now we have the pillars described. Now we have the sunan which are described. So now, from just these three hadith, I'm sure we've got a good understanding on how the Prophet ﷺ prayed. I'm sure we do that anyway, we pray anyway, but now you've got a good understanding of the dalil also. But if you had never prayed in your life, and you just read that, I think that would have been sufficient. That would have been sufficient to know that this is how he used to pray. When we're talking about the actions. On the authority of Ibn Abbas, who said the Prophet ﷺ said, I have been commanded to prostrate on 7 bones. So now this is the description on how to make the sujood. The forehead and the nose, which is 1. The 2 hands, 3. The 2 feet, 5. And the 2 knees. It says the 2 feet, which refers to the knees, and then the 2 ends of the feet, which is the toes. So those are the 7 modes. So we also looked at how the majority of the ulama have said that this is sunnah and it is not wajib. But the Prophet ﷺ has clearly said that he has been commanded, therefore it is wajib. And if a person leaves it out without an excuse, then his prostration would not be correct. Hadith number 94, on the authority of Abu Hurairah, who said that when the Iqamah was called, the Messenger of Allah ﷺ used to stand to pray and then make the takbir. Then he would make the takbir for ruku'. Then he used to say Sami Allahu liman hamida. Then he used to say Rabbana lakal hamd. And he used to stay in that place until he's fully stood upright. Then he would make the takbir for going down. Then he would make the takbir for sitting and then going down again. And this is how he would complete every single unit of his prayer. What do we learn from this? 94. Why do you think he's put that as 94, 91 and the others are separate? Okay, so now here we have the fashion of the prayer, which is 90, 91. We have the order of the prayer. But also in these hadith, we've talked about what are some of the pillars of the prayer. But now 94, there is something which is very common in all of this. Besides the takbiratul ihram, all of them are wajib. And we also discussed that one of the ways that you can remember the difference between the arkan and the wajibat is that the arkan are all actions. And the wajibat, like this hadith, are all statements. Except for 1 or 2. Which rukn is a statement? Takbiratul ihram, the Fatiha, and the taslim, and the last tashahhud. And what wajibat are actions? So if you say, for example, the takbir, Allahu Akbar, which is not the takbir ihram, or saying Sami Allahu liman hamida, say Rabbana lakal hamd, saying Subhan Rabbil Azim, saying Subhan Rabbil A'la, all of that will be wajib, according to the correct opinion. But there are some actions which are wajibat, which are the sitting for the first tashahhud. That would be something which is wajib. And if you miss that, that would need sujood sahwi. We'll talk about that after in this bab. 95, the hadith of Mutarrif ibn Abdullah, who said, I prayed behind Ali ibn Abi Talib, and besides us was Imran ibn Hussein. And when he would prostrate, he would make takbir, and again when he used to raise his head. And he would make takbir for getting up after 2 units. And when he finished the salat, Imran took me by my hand, and he said, this is the salah of the Prophet ﷺ. And this is how and Ali's prayer used to resemble the salah of the Prophet ﷺ. It was balanced, but it was complete. And what we also learn from this is the manner of teaching. It should be done with wisdom, it should be done with gentleness, it should be done with sincerity. He took his by his hand, and he reminded him of Rasulullah, and he gave him the gift of saying that, look, this is the way that he could have just left it at that and left that as a personal thought, but he gave him that benefit, he gave him that gift, and now that person, Mutarrif, has prayed behind somebody. Not only he was a companion, but he's prayed in the way that the Prophet ﷺ was prayed. So he's given him that information as a gift, and he held him by his hand, and he did that. On the authority of al-Bara ibn Azib, who said that I measured the Prophet's prayer, and I noticed that his standing and his ruku and his sujood, all of that was similar in length. What does that mean? Does that mean if your standing is long, that your ruku has to be long and your sujood has to be long? What does that mean?
It does mean that.
Yeah. Hassan.
It does mean that you should, if you can do, to appropriate.
Okay, so that is one opinion, which is that all of it has to be the same length. That is an opinion from some of the ulama. So if you have done 50 ayat in the first rakat, then your ruku' should be 50 ayat long, and your sujood should be 50 ayat long, etc. That is the balance that some of the ulama have taken this from Hadith al-Bara. But the other opinion, Faisal,
it's about the ratio. So, for example, if you've read Baqarah and you're standing,
yeah,
sujood should also be long in the same sort of ratio.
Right, but not necessarily 280 something ayat long. It would make it long and lengthy, and that is the correct opinion. So now what this means is that when you stand and when you make ruku' and you make it sujood, you make it proportionate. In the version corrected by Bukhari, his standing and his sitting were very close in duration. On the authority, and this is how they've understood it, some of them have said that duration means duration. It means if that was 50 minutes, that was 50 minutes. But what it means with the others is that it refers to the length given to that particular action. On the authority of Thabit al-Bunani, from Anas ibn Malik, that he said that I will lead you in prayer just like I saw the Prophet ﷺ pray. So Thabit said, Anas did things that I do not see you do now. So Thabit is with Anas, and he's saying that we have abandoned the sifat salah. When he used to raise his head from ruku', he used to stand upright, and he stayed in that position until it could be said that he has forgotten. And this is now one of the sunan that has been left out, which is that the Prophet ﷺ, after the ruku' and between the sajdatayn, between the two sajdas, he used to make it lengthy. He used to make it lengthy, and he used to praise. So what would you do after ruku'? What's prescribed for us to do after ruku'? Is that it? Is that it? Is that it? Raise your hands. But no, what should you be saying? I'm saying that this hadith is teaching us that you make it lengthy. And in between the sajdatayn, what should you be saying? So what's the pattern here? Dua. So the pattern here is after the ruku' itself is a position of praising Allah and showing Him awe and showing Him love. Because when you go to your king and your master and you bow in front of him, you are bowing and you are praising, not necessarily asking. The sujood is a position of you showing your desperation and humility. The ruku' is a position of you showing awe and glory and majesty to your Creator. So when you stand up from that, you continue with that in praising. It's not a position for you to make dua, it's not a position for you to do other things. Then when you go into sajda, that's the position for you to make dua. And in between the sajdatayn, dua. And what you should be asking for from the dua is from the Prophet ﷺ in sajda and between the two sajdas is to ask for Allah's forgiveness. Now, is it permissible for us to make dua in ruku' and after ruku'? Yes. Is it permissible for us to praise Allah in sajda? Yes. Nobody is saying that you can't do this, and if you do that, maybe the sujood salah will always say that. But the asl is, the thumb rule is that before the ruku', in the ruku' and after the ruku' is a place of praising Allah. Now a person might ask that after you've made the ruku', you should be making dua al-qunut, or the dua of nawazil of the qunut, if there is a nazila. Then this will come after you have praised Allah. And it comes because there is a congregational dua that needs to be done. But the ulama have also agreed that if the imam is leading the people in prayer and he's making dua, then it's not permissible for him to make dua for himself. It's not permissible for him to do that. So if he's in sajda saying Rabbik Filli, or he's in between the two sajda saying Rabbik Filli, only me, forget the 100 people behind me, that's not allowed. He would need to make it into a plural form. On the authority of Anas ibn Malik, that he said, I have not prayed behind any imam who was light yet most complete than the Prophet ﷺ. And what we learn from this is that when you're leading the people in prayer, that you have to show compassion and gentleness and mercy towards them. But at the same time, we have to remember, as we will see, that there are certain sunan which are being left out. I mean, Salatul Dhuhr, I don't know about you guys, but wherever I pray Salatul Dhuhr, is as if the Imam has prayed Falaq al-Nas like all the time. Or he's praying Ikhlas, really small surahs. And we've seen from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, the second longest salah of the day is what? Isha, Maghrib, Dhuhr. Habitually, the Prophet ﷺ used to make Dhuhr extremely long. So that is one of the sunnah that's been left out. So now that is something that we have to bear in mind with hadith number 98, is that we don't sacrifice the sunnah to make it light for the people. But what we have to do is we have to accustom the people and teach the people and try and gradually get them ready to that position where they are making it long, or according to the sunnah. On the authority of Abdullah ibn Zayd from Abu Qilaba, that he said that he had Malik ibn Huwayrith came to our masjid here and he said, I want to lead you in the prayer. So he asked so he led them in the prayer that he led the Prophet ﷺ prayed in. So I asked Abu Qilaba, how did he pray? And then he said he prayed just like this man, and he pointed towards a man that is there. The point that we learn from this is that the Prophet ﷺ taught his companions how to pray, and they showed importance to it, and they preserved it. It's no good for us now just to learn how to learn how the Prophet ﷺ prayed, but then we are quick in our prayer, and we are not following the sunnah, and we are not following what we learn from this. If we are studying it, then the hujjah is against us, number one. If we are studying it, then who is going to preserve it? Who is going to pass it on? Who is going to teach others? Look at what the companions are doing. More than one hadith here, the companions have taught people after them, Abu Qilaba and Mutarrif and Abdullah. All of them were taught from the companions by action on how to pray. And that's why Sifat Salah is very important. And also what we learn from this, I'm sure we talked about, is that if you are showing an act of worship in order for other people to benefit from, then this is not riyah. If you are showing an act of worship so that people will say, look how pious this man is, that is riyah. You see the fine line now? So you could do an action to show people that this is something which is recommended. If you are taken as somebody that they're looking at you and they're following, maybe your children, for example, maybe your family members, for example, see, my father is doing it in that way, that's how I want to do it. That's not riyah. On the authority of Abdullah ibn Malik ibn Buhayna, that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to spread out his hands when he used to pray, to the extent that the whiteness of his armpits used to be seen. And again, what we learn from this is that there are certain makruhat that the Prophet ﷺ has from the prayer. And one of them is that we are not allowed to pray in a position where we are shriveled up. And that's how the ulama have interpreted this. Not in the sense that his hands were wide apart. And I'm sure we talked about this before. And we find some of the brothers and some people having that interpretation. Me personally, I've never seen any of the ulama making sujood like that.
Well, I know Hadith is saying that the Prophet, when he prayed, do sujood is to be in a space like an ox to walk through.
A small sheep, yes. So the point here, again, all of this is that he was far apart, his body wasn't conjoined, exactly like this hadith is saying here. He wasn't shriveled up, but at the same time, he wasn't outstretched like a wild animal. And he wasn't sitting like a fox. And he wasn't resembling an animal. He was balanced. He was balanced. On the authority now, on 101, on the authority of Abu Maslama, that the Prophet ﷺ used to pray with his shoes on. He asked Anas, did the Prophet ﷺ used to pray with his shoes on? And the Prophet ﷺ said yes. Anas said yes, that he used to pray with his shoes on. Is it permissible for us to pray with our shoes on? No? Yes? Okay. I thought I said no. I thought I had no. Some of the scholars have said no. The majority of ulama, because here Bukhari and Muslim, yes, but there are certain conditions that it has to be clean, it has to be mubah in itself for you to be praying in them. We also know the narration where Jibreel came and told him to take his shoes off, and he took his shoes off. So you have to be careful before you pray, but if there is a need for you to pray with your shoes on, then it is permissible, as long as it's not going to create any difficulty for other people. So now we're living in a scenario where people won't generally pray with their shoes on inside your house, inside the masjid, in the musalla. You don't need to pray with your shoes on. But if you're outside on the motorway or something like that, then it's permissible. Yes, Hassan.
I have some elements recommend before you pray with your shoes to look at your shoes to see if they...
Yeah, to check if there's any najas on it, if it's clean. Even if it's maybe a bit muddy or something, to wipe yourself off before you pray. That is all recommended. 102, on the authority of Abu Qatada al-Ansari, the Messenger ﷺ used to pray salat while holding Umama bint Zainab. Who's Umama? Yeah? His granddaughter through Zainab. And she got the name bint Rasulullah. On the authority of Abu al-As ibn Rabi', that he said that when he would make sujood, he would place her on the ground, and when he used to stand up, he would pick her up again. What do we learn from that?
You can pray picking up a child.
Obvious one is that you can pray picking up a child. What about picking up a phone?
Yes, if there's a necessity.
If there's a necessity, if there's a need, if you're reciting from it, to turn it off. So this is a good point, what Ibrahim just said. Anything that is needed for the betterment for the salah is permissible for you to make that movement. Anything that is needed for the betterment of the salah, then it's permissible for you to make that movement. Now a person might turn around and say, well, Umama, why was he carrying her? She's not part of the salat. Then what we're saying here is the Prophet ﷺ is teaching us that a mother, a father, anybody who has a need to hold something during the prayer, and that cannot be delayed, and it would affect his khushu', then it's permissible for you to hold the child. 103, on the authority of Anas bin Malik, that the Prophet ﷺ said, be just in your sujood, don't reach your arms out like the laying of a dog. Don't stretch your arms out, don't put them on the floor, don't make it too wide apart, be balanced. And that's now how we understand this one, the whiteness of his armpits. Alayhi salam. This is Sifr Salah. It's not the end of Sifr Salah. It cannot be. There's only a few hadith here. But what we have now is a general understanding of how the Prophet ﷺ prayed. And hopefully we have a bit more understanding as to the qawaid of the tarjih that we see on the board. The obligation of tranquility in sujood and ruku'. What does that mean? Tranquility. Yes. Faisal.
Like when you do the sujood and you stop in that position and rest before coming back up.
But is it just in sujood and ruku'? So now, the majority of ulama have said tranquility is a pillar. Is there a group of scholars saying that you don't need to have tranquility? You don't need to have tranquility. The Hanafi say you don't need to have tranquility. So if you went from one position to another and you've not stopped, your bones haven't rested, you're completely fluent throughout your prayer, then that salah is valid. And you will probably find many people, I know in Saudi Arabia, I found many people from Afghanistan, they were praying in that manner. They wouldn't stop. There was no stopping in the prayer. Even after Sami Allahu liman hamida, it's like he pecked and he'd gone down again. No stopping.
What did they say about the hadith and the Prophet?
Sunnah. All of that is sunnah. And this is the hadith. The hadith of the man who prayed badly. He entered the masjid and the Prophet ﷺ, he greeted him. The Prophet ﷺ went inside, and it's not narrated that he prayed the Tahiyyat al-Masjid, and then he said to him, Assalamu alayk, Ya Rasulullah. And then he told him, he prayed, and he told him to go back to pray, and because he hasn't prayed, and that happened 3 times, and then he said, O Messenger of Allah, by the one who has sent you with the truth, I cannot pray in a better manner than this, so teach me. And this is very, very important. The Sifr Salah is extremely important. The companion has been known, this hadith is known as the Musi' Salat, the person who prayed badly. And that is a companion. And he was alone in the Masjid of the Prophet ﷺ. Imagine us 1440 years after. How important must it be for us to get this right? And it's easy for us to take things for granted. I know people, you see people all the time taking Salah, being very easy in it, and sometimes not even realizing what they're doing. The Prophet ﷺ said, when you stand up to pray, and here now, what the ulama have taken from this is that he taught him the pillars of the prayer. He didn't teach him to recite the Fatiha. He didn't teach. He didn't give him the intricate details. He gave him the shell of the prayer. And what seems to be standing out is that this man, he wasn't standing with tranquility. So the Prophet ﷺ made emphasis is that when you make sujood, when you make ruku, when you come up, when you go down, make sure there is khushu' in every single part. And the ulama have talked about sujood and ruku' in particular because that's what the narration talks about. Because in sujood and ruku' it's very easy for us not to get that right. Because when you're standing, when you're doing the Fatiha, there's going to be a point in time where you have stood upright. But when it comes to ruku' and sujood, it's very easy for us not to make our back straight and pay attention to the tranquility. So this is another pillar of the salah which is added to the Sifr Salah. The recitation in salah. Is this a pillar? Is it a wajib or is it sunnah? Surah al-Fatiha is wajib. It's a pillar, not wajib, it's a pillar. So that's Hadith 105. But anything after that is sunnah. Okay, so for example, in Maghrib prayer, imagine I did it quietly, and in the Asr prayer I did it loud. Is that allowed? Do I have to make sujood sahu? No, because all of it is sunnah. What you recite and how you recite, all of it is sunnah. And the ulama agreed on that, except for the Fatiha. What is the Fatiha? Where does it start? Does it start from Bismillah or does it not start from Bismillah? It starts from Bismillah. Are you sure?
No.
So then you need to do Bismillah aloud.
No.
So then what? So Bismillah is part of Fatiha?
No.
It's not part of Fatiha. Who thinks it's part of Fatiha? Okay, that's fine. So then if you are saying that it's part of the Fatiha, does that mean you have to recite it out loud?
No.
So then why wouldn't you? Because it's part of the Fatiha. The Prophet ﷺ is telling us that you need to make the Fatiha. So that it's part of the Fatiha, but you don't do it loud and you start with Alhamd. Okay, Sami.
There was a hadith where there was some person had another person when they were praying. They went straight. They said Allah. They said Takbir and they went straight to Alhamdulillah.
That's exactly this hadith here of Anas bin Malik. He said, I heard the Prophet ﷺ pray, Abu Bakr and Umar, and all of them began with Alhamd. So what stands out to be the correct opinion is that the Basmala is not part of the Fatiha, because Allah Jalla wa Ala in a Hadith Qudsi said that I have separated the prayer between me and my servant into 2 parts. Qasamtu salat bayni wa bayni abdi nisfayn. Did he start with the Basmala? So Alhamdulillah. Ikhtilaf, but here what we're talking about is what is the correct view. This is the point. This is not the point. So you can have that opinion, up to you. But what seems to be the correct opinion is that the Basmala is not part of the Fatiha. But the Fatiha is a pillar, and that is again an issue of controversy, and we are saying the Fatiha is a pillar, and it's not wajib, it's a pillar.
So if I don't recite Fatiha in Salah,
The majority okay, so if you're praying alone, majority of ulama have said that the Fatiha, you must do it, otherwise Salah is not valid. The Hanafis have said in the last 2 rak'at is sunnah. Even if you're praying alone. Sunnah. So technically, even if you got up from the sajda, you got up from the first tashahhud, you stood up, and you just stood up, you put your hands and you said, Subhanallah, you can go down into ruku. And that is done. But here, the Prophet ﷺ has said there is no salat. Your salat is invalid except if you recite the Fatihatul Kitab. And this clearly shows that it's a pillar. Okay, so that's when you're praying alone. What about if you're in Jama'ah? What if you're praying behind the Imam? It's wajib and not a pillar. Because the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever doesn't pray the Fatiha, then this is khidaj. And khidaj refers to a deficiency in reward. And that's in Sahih Muslim. And the way the ulama have combined 105 and that hadith in Muslim, which is that if you are praying alone, then it's a pillar. If you are praying in Jama'ah, then if you've missed it out for a reason, then it's deficient, but your salah is valid. And this seems to be... So now we've talked about 3 masail. What is the Fatiha? Where does it start with? The importance of it when you're praying alone, and still the obligation of it when you're praying in Jama'ah. Nahid.
You know, if you're late to the Jama'ah, right?
Yeah.
So you stand up after the Imam finishes. Would it become a pillar?
Yeah. It's always a pillar.
You know what I'm saying? Sometimes when we go there in the masjid, we see the Imam already on the
Ruku. Okay.
And, on that time, if you didn't get
So now, in that scenario, like we said, if you've missed it out for a valid reason, then in that scenario, your salah would be valid, but it would be khidaj, it would be deficient in reward. But your salah is valid, because there's dalil for that.
Someone said if they're allowed, that in the Fajr, Maghrib, Isha.
Yeah, it makes no difference. It makes no difference. Because the Prophet ﷺ said in another hadith, if you have met the ruku, man adraka ruku, adraka rak'ah. Whoever, you get that, yeah? Whoever meets the ruku, the imam is in the ruku, then you've got the rak'ah. He didn't tell us to go back and pray the Fatiha and then go into ruku, none of those things. And that actually even happened at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. A man called Abu Bakr, he came, he made ruku, and he walked the rest of the masjid to meet the Jama'ah. He saw them, he came in, he saw them in ruku. So what do I do? If I carry on walking, I'm going to miss the rak'ah. This is the understanding that he had. Because he knew that if I make ruku now, then I've caught that rak'ah. So he made ruku and he walked the rest of the way. The Prophet ﷺ told him, don't repeat the action of walking, but you have met the rak'ah. You have met the congregation. 106 on the authority of Abu Qatada al-Ansari that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ used to recite the Fatiha and the Surah in the first 2 rak'at of Dhuhr. And he would make the first one longer than the second one. And sometimes he would be able to hear what he is reciting. Does that mean he's making it audible? How? As in like in a voice, in like a normal voice? Or is it a loud whisper? A loud whisper. Yeah, a loud whisper. So here he's giving them that he would make the first, not that one. Sometimes we would be able to hear him recite. Which is that he is not reciting. He's not making tilawah. There's a difference. We should be able to hear him recite. He used to recite the Fatiha and the 2 surahs in Asr and then make the first one longer than... So what do we learn from this now? 106. We learn that each rak'ah has to follow a sequence of it going down. Yeah? So the first one in its standing, in its ruku', in its sujood is going to be longer than the second one. And the second one in all of its positions are going to be longer than the third one. And what helps you to do the first one is because you've got the dua istiftah and you've got certain things that you don't have in the second one. The third one, you've got just the Fatiha. But that would still be longer than the fourth one. And that's how the order of the prayer goes. That's one thing that we learn. The second thing that we learn, and I think we talked... Okay, so 107, the Prophet ﷺ used to recite a tur sometimes, a musalat sometimes, al-A'raf. How long is A'raf? About 200 ayats roughly. He used to recite that in Maghrib. Tur is something like 50 or 60, top of my head, ayat. And now here in Isha, he recited Watteen wa Zaytoon. And Bara said, I've not heard something more beautiful than the voice of the Rasul reciting that surah. 109 of Aisha, the Prophet ﷺ sent a man and he recited Qul huwa Allahu ahad at the end of every rak'ah. Okay, so let's stop at 107, 108. What we learn now is Fajr needs to be long. We haven't really looked at that yet, but Fajr needs to be long. How long is Fajr? 60 to 100 ayat. Can you give me examples? In both rak'at, 60 to 100. What would you recite roughly? Nazi'at and Abasa, that's about 100 together. Mursalat and Amma is about 100 altogether. So that's about 100. And what we also learn is that from all 5 prayers, the Prophet ﷺ used to pray from the Mufassal. What's the Mufassal? The 11th, the back end, but where does that start? From, there's different, some of them say it starts from Qaf, and others said it starts from Hujurat. Either way, it's one surah. From Hujurat until Nas. That's the selection that the Prophet ﷺ used to have in his 5 daily prayers. So now, if you're talking about, let's say 50 ayat in one rak'ah, and another 50, or 60 even, then you could have, for example, Mulk in the first one. That's about 30. That is 30. And then something maybe a bit shorter, because remember, we're talking about the first one being longer than the second one. So then maybe something like Muzammil, which is about 20, you've got 50. Yeah? And this is how the Prophet ﷺ used to do it. That's Fajr. Fajr is 60 to 100. Dhuhr, how many ayat? 45 to 60 ayat. And that's in the first 2 rak'at. 45 to 60 ayat. So now, for example, you could split Amma in 2 rak'at. And then the last 2, there's no surah. That's extremely lengthy. Like I've said, I've prayed by people, you've not even done the Fatiha in the first rak'ah and he's gone into ruku. Allah musta'an. Asr, 15 to 30. Asr is 15 to 30. So now, a good way of remembering Asr, and this is not necessarily just for the Imam, it's for us. This is the Sunnah of the Prophet. So now, Dhuhr is half of Asr. Roughly, Dhuhr is half of Asr. Maghrib, we have now here proof to suggest that it can be long. But habitually, the Prophet ﷺ used to pray from the Qisar and Mufassal, the very short ones from the Mufassal. And some of the ulama have said that this goes up to Idha Zuzila. Some of them said no, it goes beyond Idha Zuzila because Bayyina is there in the middle and that's quite long. So some of the ulama said it stops at Idha Zuzila. But the ulama agreed that from Duha to Nas, those are known as the small surahs from the Quran. Those are known as the small surahs. Wallahu understand. I mean, that's how the companions looked at the small surahs. And I know people, adults, they're content with just Alam Tara. Up to Alam Tara, that's fine. I'll be happy dying in that state. And then, that's the Maghrib. And then we have the Isha, which is anywhere from the Mufassal. The Imam can dictate. And we can see here while he was travelling, he did Watteen. And we also know from other narrations, the Isha sometimes used to do, habitually used to do Buruj and Tariq. Buruj and Tariq. And Buruj and Tariq will be shorter than Dhuhr. But obviously when it's loud, and he used to stop at the sentences and it would get longer. Okay, 109 is proof for us that you can recite more than one surah in a rak'ah. It's also proof for us that the order doesn't necessarily have to be there, but it is highly recommended. How do we know that? He's recited Qul Huwa Allahu Ahad at the end of every rak'ah. So how do we know that the order doesn't have to be there?
That's towards the end.
Exactly. So now, for example, say he's praying Fajr, yeah? Say in the first rak'ah he prays Amma. Then he finishes it with Qul Huwa Allahu Ahad. In the second rak'ah, he has to do something after Qul Huwa Allahu Ahad. If we're going to say that every rak'ah has to follow on. That makes sense? So he'd have to do either Falaq or Nas, but he wouldn't. He could do Naziyat, he could do something else, and then do Qul Huwa Allahu Ahad. Is it recommended for us to do Qul Huwa Allahu Ahad after every rak'ah? Why not? The Prophet himself didn't do it. The Prophet himself didn't do it. So it'd be better for us not to do it, but this man did it and he described why he did it and he got what he wanted. 1010, we learn from this also, and this is the hadith of Mu'adh, and this is actually talking about the Isha prayer and the loud prayers in general. He's saying that if you have to pray, then pray from Washamsi. Say Sabbih Isma Rabb, Washamsi, Wal Layli, Wal Duha, Wal Adiyat, and other narrations which are talking about these medium to small Mufassal. Because there are people who are elderly, there are people who are weak, and there are people who have things to do. We looked at the basmala. Sujood al-sahw. What does sahw mean? The Prophet forget. There's a difference between sahw and nisyan.
Yeah, he did.
Nisyan is complete forgetfulness. Sahw is what then? Sahw is doubt. Sahw could be doubt. Sahw could be forgetfulness, but he's re-understood that he's made a mistake. But nisyan is completely different. Nisyan is when you're completely gone to a state of ignorance again. To a complete state of ignorance again. So now if I say to you 1 + 1 = 3, and I genuinely believe it's not a slip of the tongue, I think, oh, I made a sahw. It's 2. Let me go back. But if I say 1 + 1 is 3, and I genuinely don't know the answer, that's nisyan. And that cannot be possible, because the Prophet ﷺ has been come to protect the message, and he's delivered that message. How sometimes he used to practice that message, it could be that, and this is the ulama of Ahl Sunnah agreed, that the Prophet ﷺ would make ijtihad, and that could be corrected. Or it could be that he made a mistake. Or it could be that he did something which was not better. But had that affected his ability to delay or deliver the message, not delay, deliver the message, then revelation would have come down. For example, when he went to his wife's house, they've said, oh, what's that smell from your mouth? It smells horrible. Have you been drinking that honey again? He goes, yeah, I went to that house, my other wife's house, and I drank some honey. What's wrong with that? He goes, no, don't do it again. 2 of his wives are ganging up on one of his wives. So don't go there, don't drink that honey again. It just smells horrible, stinks, citrus, horrible. Prophet used to hate it. When he found out they were plotting, he said, Wallahi, I'm not going to go near them for 1 month. He didn't speak to any of his wives. He stayed in the masjid. He didn't speak to any single one of them. Revelation came down. Ya ayyuhan nabi, lima tuharrim ma ahallallahu lak. Why have you done an oath making something haram for yourself when you shouldn't have done that? So this is proof for us that the Prophet ﷺ would change. There is ijtihad, there could be mistakes, but that doesn't affect his delivering of the message, and that's why sahw is not connected to what people could level at the Prophet ﷺ in saying that he was forgetful and he didn't know what he was doing sometimes, etc. On the authority, 112 and 113, just 2 hadith, and both of these teach us how the Prophet ﷺ made sahw. And we have 4 scenarios. I can't get up because I'm charging here. We have 4 scenarios, otherwise around the board. 4 scenarios. 2 of them are before the ruku', 2 of them before the salam, and 2 of them after the salam. And this is what we learn from these 2 hadith. The hadith of Abdullah ibn Buhayna, and there's also another narration of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, which is not here. And this is the most famous one, 112, is the hadith of Dhul Yadayn. What are the scenarios where you would make... Why would you make sujood sahw, firstly? Yeah, Faisal.
If you miss out a wajib.
So if I've said Allahu Akbar, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, I think, oh, subhanallah, I forgot to say A'udhu Billahi Minash Shaitanir Rajeem, Bismillah, I forgot to say the dua, subhanakallahumma. Do I need to make sujood sahw for that? That's sunnah, you don't have to. Although some of the ulama have said that if you've got a forgetfulness, even something that you were supposed to do, but you didn't do it, out of genuine forgetfulness, then you would do sahw for that also, because of the generality. And that's the opinion of Uthaymeen also. But the majority of ulama says sahw is only for rukn that's been missed out, or a wajib that has been missed out. If a wajib has been missed out, do we go back to that wajib? That would nullify your salah if you went back to that wajib. So for example, what's a wajib? Subhan Rabbil Azim. He's gone into ruku' and he was thinking about something completely random. His salah is still sahih. The khushu has gone down, salah is still sahih. He didn't say anything, and he said, Sami Allahu liman hamida. Then he realized, I forgot to say Subhan Rabbil Azim. Does he go back down? He doesn't go back down. He's moved. If he goes back down, the salah is batil. So now we learn that the wajibat, he just continues, and then he makes the sujood. What about the rukn though? Yeah, Faisal.
He would go back to it.
For the arkan, you have to go back to them. Now, but how do you go back to them? This is the question. This is where they differed. So now, for example, instead of going to ruku', I've gone straight into sujood. I've forgot how many pillars? At least 2 pillars. If you want to count tranquility as one, then that's a 3rd one. Ruku', tranquility, standing. 3 pillars I've missed. So I've done Malikin Nas, Ilahin Nas, Min al-Jinnati one, all the way into sujood somehow, randomly, yeah? Subhana Rabbil A'la. Now, you've forgotten 3 pillars. What do you do now? Some of the ulama say, no, what you do now, you've remembered, you go back to that position of the pillar. You go back to the position of the pillar. So then what would you do? You'd stand up and go into ruku. And this is an opinion of Uthaymeen, and I think this is a very strong opinion. But a lot of the ulama, the Shafi'is, Ahmad, they've said you just carry on. And you just X that raka'ah, and then you carry on, and you replace that one for the next one. So say that was your second raka'ah. You continue, you won't sit now. You'd stand up again because that one has been nullified. You offer that second one again, then you would sit. Make sense? Yeah? So now that's the rukn, that's the wajib, that's sahu. When do we do taslim before, when do we do sujood before the taslim or after the taslim? Faisal.
It depends on the scenario. Really.
Okay.
If you forget something,
Okay.
like you missed something out from the slide,
Okay.
then it should be before. If you added something, then it should be after.
Okay.
If you have a doubt and you go with what is lesser, then it should be after.
Okay.
And if you've got a doubt and went with what is likely, then it should be.
Okay, good. This is exactly what we said. Some of the ulama have said it's the opposite. Some of the ulama have said that if you think what is lesser, then you would do the taslim, you do it before the taslim, and if you've gone with what you think is yaqeen, then you do that after the taslim. But either way, the ulama agreed that however you do the sujood sahu is all when it's talking about how to reconcile these ahadith. It's not talking about the validity of your sujood sahu. So if you do sujood sahu always before the taslim, it's fine. If you do it always after the taslim, that's fine. But here we're talking about how we can act upon all these narrations. If you forgot something, if you forgot the Subhana Rabbiyal Azim that we just talked about, you would carry on your prayer, sujood as-sahu before the taslim or after the taslim. You've forgotten something. Before the taslim. Before the taslim. So what you would do is you'd finish your prayer normally, at-tahiyyat, durood, dua, whatever you want, Allahu Akbar, Subhana Rabbil A'la. Allahu Akbar, Rabbi Gfirli. Allahu Akbar, Subhana Rabbil A'la. Allahu Akbar, Rabbi Gfirli, Salam. You don't need to make tashahhud again, although some of the ulama have said that you can't have taslim without tashahhud. Doesn't make sense. Because that whole sitting and taslim is one package. So you need to do tashahhud again and the taslim again. But that's not the correct opinion based on what we have here. That's an example of before the taslim. After the taslim, I've stood up and I prayed the 5th rak'ah. I'm supposed to be praying 4 for dhuhr. I prayed the 5th rak'ah. What would I do in that scenario? What do I do first thing? I've stood up and it's my 5th rak'ah, and now I know for certain that this is my 5th rak'ah. You carry on. You finish 5. You sit down. Straight away, you sit down. Even if it's in ruku or something like that, and you realize that for certain this is my 5th rak'ah. I know it is because I'm thinking about something for the 5th time. So then you sit down straight away. Sit down. If the imam is praying 5 and you know he's praying 5, you can't follow him. You have to sit and you have to wait for him. In that scenario, you've added. In that scenario, you would do the taslim. You'd finish your salah, you do the taslim, then you do Allahu Akbar, and taslim again. But the ulama have said that if you are the imam, and it is better for you then to make the taslim once and then do sujood. So you would say, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and the people expecting the second salam, you're going to Allahu Akbar. Because then there's no confusion. Any questions to yourself? Ibrahim?
Something quite common, obviously, like if you forget on your second rak'ah, you forget to do the tahiyyat, and you go back up. Now, would you correct it straight away and sit back down if you remember?
No. Wajibat. Once you remember, you carry on. Rukn is different. If it's a rukn, then I would say go back to that rukn immediately. If it's a wajib, you have to carry on, otherwise your salah is batil. There's that very big distinction there. Faisal.
Just to double check, so after if you've added something,
Yes.
then you do your salam, and then you do your sujood sahu, 2 of them.
And then salam again.
Salam again, yeah?
Right. No. If you've added something, after the salam.
You do 2 salams then.
Yeah. Sorry. You would do taslim. The question here is, do you do taslim after the sujood sahu? Yes, there is sujood sahu taslim. When we're talking about before the salam, there's only 1 taslim. When we're talking about after the salam, we're talking about 2 taslim. That makes sense? Yeah?
What, for example, you've
Yeah. And then yours imam, you go back into sujood.
Good question.
And then
Everybody else is getting up. What do you do in that scenario? In that, if the imam has finished the prayer and you were with him, okay, it could be that you're with the imam and he's done sujood al-sahu and he's not done taslim yet. You have to follow him. You have to follow him. Your salah is not invalid because you're still following the imam. If the imam has finished the prayer, he's done salamu alaykum, and then he does sujood al-sahu, now the ulama have said, if you are with him with that mistake, then you carry on. You do the sujood with him. Because you were part of that mistake. You realize that he's made a mistake and you were part of that mistake. So you do the sujood with him, then he gets up, then he does taslim, then you get up and you finish as normal. If you weren't with him with that mistake, then you carry out, you stand up and you carry on and you finish your prayer. Make sense? But there's one other mas'ala. If you've done sujood with him and you are with him with the mistake, have you done your sujood in the right place? Is there such thing as sujood sahu in the middle of the prayer? No such thing. So in that scenario, you'd have to do sujood sahu again for yourself at the end. That makes sense? Yeah? Because you've not done it in the right place. طيب, that's sujood sahu. Yes, Faisal.
Then why would you follow him in that sujood sahu then if that doesn't count for you?
Because he's still your imam. Because he's still your imam and you still have witnessed the fault that he has made congregationally, as a congregation. So you're making the sujood. But the thing is now, the reason why you do it again is because you haven't offered it in the right place. Well, Samad? Okay. Walking in front of the person who is praying. So now we're still talking about the salat, the chapter of salat. Walking, what's the ruling on walking in front of someone that is praying? So now we have the importance of having a sutra. What's a sutra, Sami?
It's something that's bigger than, it's supposed to be something that's just in front of you.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah? No? What about my phone?
No.
Are you saying it has to be higher? How high? Arm's length, thank you. Arm's length. We're talking about that high. Does it have to be wide? It doesn't have to be wide. As long as, because the Prophet ﷺ used to pray with a spear sometimes. But it has to be lengthy. Why is sutra important? Yes, Avi.
So your prayer is not obstructed.
The prayer is not obstructed by who?
The person who's passing.
By a person who's passing, or even the shaitan himself. So it's preserving your khushu. It's preserving where you are fixated in your vision and you're looking. It's preserving your prayer in general. You're not being distracted by people around you, especially if you're praying in front of a wall or something like that. And the Prophet ﷺ used to pray in front of pillars and walls all the time. So now we learn that the Prophet ﷺ also commanded us to take a sutra. So now we learn the importance of preserving your prayer, to the extent that we've also mentioned that you won't be even allowed to speak to people who are important, your mother, your child even, whilst you are praying. That's how important that bond of the salah is. So there is a verbal bond, but there is also a physical bond between you and Allah and what you are asking for and what you are and the deity that you are worshipping. So now walking in front of that praying person would not be acceptable in Islam. It would not be acceptable. And this is how we have the hadith now. If the one who passes in front of a person who is praying knew the sin that would be incurring, he would wait for 40 and that would be better for him. And another, the person who narrated it, said, I don't know whether he meant 40 days, 40 months or 40 years. Because of the severity of a person cutting that connection between him and his master, or the master and his servant. Because how do you know what Allah is saying to you whilst you are praying? And a person walks in front of you in front of that. How do you know what khushu that person has with his Lord, and the person wants to come and cut that? That would not be acceptable. On authority, but there are instances when it will be accepted, as we will see. I heard the Messenger of Allah say, if any of you prays towards something that is screening him, and someone wants to pass in front of him, then he should push him away, and if he insists, then he should fight him, for he's the devil. Now that might seem very harsh, but what does that mean, Sami?
It doesn't mean be aggressive.
Right.
Just give him a sign.
Thank you. Excellent. So what you should do is push him, meaning give him a sign. I'm trying to pray here. That's what I'm trying to do. But then if he continues, then fight him. What does that mean, fight him?
Is it a little nudge?
No.
Pressing him down to the ground, back to push it.
Do ruqya on him. No. What does fight him mean?
It means to use force and don't let him pass.
No. Huh? Throw him on the floor. What are you praying?
Just a repellent.
Persist. Persist. The meaning here is persist. And the reason why we know this is the Prophet ﷺ himself, the shaitan tried to cut him in his prayer, and he stopped him. But this was the physical shaitan, so he was pushing him back like that, to the extent that he felt the wetness of his tongue on his hand. And he said, I would have wrapped him up on one of the pillars of the masjid, had it not been for the dua of Sulaiman, I would have done so. Yes, sister?
If you're sitting in front of someone and they're praying sunnah,
Yeah.
can you move while that person's
If a person is a sutra for another person, is that person allowed to move? Yes. Why? You've raised a very interesting point here. Why is that? Because now we're talking about walking in front of the praying person. What does that mean? In front. In front refers to crossing. Yeah? Yeah?
already there.
What do you mean already there?
Like you're already like there because they're praying sunnah, but you're already there.
Alright, so say Mahi's in front of me and I'm praying. Say he's facing that way and I'm praying. So what do you mean now? He's my sutra.
Yeah, he was already there.
Okay.
He's not crossing.
Yeah, so
He's not, okay, good. Okay, so he's not the point here that we're making is in front means that a person is going to cut the person off in his prayer. Now, it could be that he's got a sutra and he's cutting that person off in the sutra. Or it could be that the person doesn't have a sutra for whatever reason, but still he is trying to get in front of the area where he's going to make sujood. None of that is acceptable. But if a person is cutting through, so now if he's praying in front of me, and he's sitting in front of me, and he gets up, and he wants to leave that way, is that allowed? He's going to go through me, not across me. Is that allowed?
Yeah.
That's fine. Because that's not what is prohibited here. So the Prophet ﷺ is telling us now, if I'm praying, and a person comes through, remind him. If he continues, persist. Yeah? No ruqya, no violence necessary. Yeah? Because he has a shaitan. Because the shaitan. Now, why? The shaitan, he wants to distract you in your prayer. So the Prophet was telling us, repel the shaitan. But you can't do it with force because he's your brother at the end of the day. Yeah?
You know, if you have like rows in
Yeah?
what if a person is like 2 rows in front of you and like someone's praying 2 rows behind you?
Excellent.
Something there.
Good question. So what is the distance that we are not allowed to pass in front of? Sujood. A lot of the ulama say 3 dhira. And 3 dhira means 3 arm spans. From his leg or from his foot, 3 arm spans. And that is the area which is sanctified, if you like. But the correct opinion is that the place of sujood. Because that is the place where, even if he had a sutra, it would be placed. And the person doesn't deserve anything more than that. Because anything beyond that, it's not his prayer. And I've actually seen people pray. So for example, the guy is at the wall, and he's standing here, he would walk all the way around rather than walk that way. I don't get that. Because he's not praying here, he's praying over there. So the answer to that is that the place of his sujood. 116 on authority of Ibn Abbas, he walked through the rows with his donkey. 117, Aisha radiallahu anha said that she used to put her feet out in front of the Prophet ﷺ. And when he used to come down to make sujood, he used to tap me and I used to move it. What do we learn from 116? The Imam Sutra is the sutra for everybody. If he has no sutra, then that still is that position for everybody. So now, for example, say this was the masjid, these were the rows, and that was the only exit, and a person had to walk through the saf to get to the back, for example, then he has to. And there's no harm in that. And we find that in Makkah and Medina all the time. People walking through rows. And what we learn from this also is that we know, as we will see, that a donkey is not allowed, and that would be one of the things that some of the ulama say would nullify your prayer, because of the najasa that is connected to a donkey and the najasa that it carries, and it would cut that virtuous bond that you have. But yet, he did this when he was cutting through the rows. So now, what we learn from this is that the sutra of the Imam is the sutra for the congregation. 117, what do we learn from that one? Exactly what we were just saying a minute ago. is that what is prohibited is in front of. So now, say I'm sitting here, and a person is praying here, and I want to grab that mushaf. Am I allowed to do that? No. Junaid say no. Yes? No. No, because if it's going to affect his khushu. No. But not because of this. So now, the Prophet ﷺ's khushu was not affected with Aisha being in front of him, or parts of her body being in front of him while she was praying. It didn't affect him at all, and that's fine. But if it is going to affect him, then that would be wrong because of his khushu. So now what we've learned from this, passing in front of the person praying, you have the distance, you have what is deemed as being passing, not crossing, etc. Miscellaneous rulings, and this is, like we've seen before, in some of the books of Hadith, they've just gathered Hadith which have no particular chapter, no particular sequence to them. If any of you come to the masjid, then he should pray 2 rak'ah before he sits down. Is that wajib? It's sunnah. How do we know it's sunnah? The Prophet ﷺ is commanding it here. How do we know it's sunnah? There's only 5 fara'id in Islam.
One time when a person went into the mosque during the khutbah, the Prophet told him to pray.
Excellent. And also the hadith that we've seen before, with a lot of the ulama, they've said that the Prophet ﷺ came into the masjid and he sat down himself. There's no indication that he prayed 2 rak'at. Now some of them said that he prayed 2 rak'at, some of them said he prayed 2 and he entered and he came back out and went. That's another mas'ala. If you have entered the masjid, you've prayed 2 rak'at, or you've prayed some kind of salah, then you've left to make wudu or ghusl, or you've left to get something from your car, and you've come into the masjid again, short space of time, do you need to pray 2 rak'at again? Some say yes. But the correct opinion from the companions in their actions is that they didn't. They used to sit in i'tikaf, and they used to go out to make wudu and make ghusl, and that was towards Baqi. You know where Baqi is now, yeah? How many? It's probably about, how many meters? About 20 meters, 30 meters away from Masjid Nabawi. And they didn't pray the Tahiyatul Masjid again. On the authority of Zayd ibn al-Ahkam, he said that we used to speak in our prayers. And a person would speak to the person on his side, and he would greet him, etc. And this was until Allah revealed the ayah, stand before Allah in obedience. And then we were prohibited from talking in our prayer. Are you allowed to talk in your prayer? So what are you supposed to be doing in salat?
If there's a necessity, you can gesture.
Okay, so now you're allowed to gesture because that's not talking. Talking is not allowed. If we're saying talking is not allowed, what else is not allowed? Anything which is a normal human action in qiyas of this. Now the ulama agreed on this, even the Zahiris, etc. So now you have speaking is not allowed, eating is not allowed, drinking is not allowed, laughing is not allowed. But what about smiling? Huh? Crying excessively, if you're thinking about something which is not a part of the salat, not allowed. But what about smiling? Is that right? Because it's not speaking. So what they have done is they've said that smiling is like a gesture. It's closer towards a gesture, and gestures are allowed.
What happens if I just finish eating and I start praying and I come across some food like...
If you are fasting, that's a different issue also. If you got a small amount of food and it gets mixed up in your saliva and you swallowed it, then that's fine. If you've got a big amount of food which you are able to remove, then you have to remove it. And you are not allowed to swallow it. Are you allowed to leave it in your mouth? You can leave it in your mouth, but that is makruh. But it won't nullify your salat. Yes, Saran.
You know how you said that you can do gestures?
Yeah.
Say if someone's asking me a question or a prayer, so I can nod.
Yeah, if there's a need for you to do so. If there is a need for you to do so. It's not that we have a conversation through sign language or through someone outside of salah. If there is a need for you to do so, then that's fine. So if your child is crying, if your mother is calling you, you just say like that or something like that. You call your child here with your hand gesture. That's fine. Yes?
So what I asked me is the keys on the microphone, can I nod? Is that really a necessity?
Yeah, but would they actually do that whilst you're praying? Hypothetically, yes, but I mean... Are you allowed to speak though? If you say one word, is that speaking or not? So now, for example, if I say stand to the Imam, he's prayed 2, or he's stand up for the 5th, and I say to him sit. Can you say that? Yeah.
I don't remember which mosque this was, but the Imam, was saying, as soon as he finished Fatiha, this was in Tarawih prayer, he's saying, oh, children, can you come to the front?
In the prayer?
Yeah, in the prayer.
In what language?
In English.
The Imam.
Yeah, he was like, can you please come and stop this now? Can you please come to the front and pray the Lord?
Or like a full sentence?
Yeah. Full on and just carry on.
I've never heard of anything like that before.
No.
Is this one of your stories again? Anyway, let's get back to this. Okay, so now, are we allowed to speak? Yes, you are allowed to speak if there's a necessity. But what that necessity now means is that if there is something from a tasbih or an ayah from the Quran or something that you can recite, in order for that necessity to be removed, then that's what you should do. But if you need to speak, like Junaid, like that, or fire, something like that, or come, then that is fine because there's a small amount necessary. But a full sentence would not be acceptable. Ibrahim?
To make an action, or is it authentic that you can reply the salam with?
Yes, that's all thing. Good. Jazakallah khair. The Prophet ﷺ in the Hadith of Bilal and other narrations, the Prophet ﷺ, he used to reply with his hand. Ibn Mas'ud said that he used to reply with his head. There's other narrations from other companions, he used to reply with his finger. That the Prophet ﷺ, when he used to be praying, people used to come and they used to give him salam, and he used to reply. Bilal's is that he used to move his hand. So he's praying there, a person walks past, maybe he do not notice that he's praying, and he used to reply with his hand. Ibn Mas'ud, with his finger, with his head. And the tafsir of that is that they've said that he was in sujood, and it was easier for him to give the reply using his head or his... So these are proof of gestures. And we've also seen in the eclipse that Aisha had a conversation through gestures with her sister due to the event of the eclipse, etc. Yeah, go on. Last question.
Is that, can you apply back to salam in the nawafil and the wajibat as well?
With your hand, yes. With your hand. For fard as well, yes.
If you want to reprimand a child or something, that was praying, is that the case?
Yeah. Yeah, if for the...
Break it, sorry.
Can you break your salat?
I mean, if the kid is, or if you're...
Breaking a wajib salah, breaking the nafil salah or the sunan salat, the rawatib, then that is permissible, but it's not recommended. Again, it's permissible, but it's not recommended. But you now have to realize what is the greater good. If your mum genuinely needs you and you're praying a nafil, then that would take precedence. But Allah says in the Quran, "La tubtilu a'malakum." Don't nullify your deeds. If you started something, then complete it. So this is the thumb rule. You can't play around in that manner. You can't just say, oh, well, I'm going to start doing something good. Oh, I'll just leave it now. I'll make it up afterwards. That's not the attitude of belief. When it comes to a fard prayer, then it's not permissible for you to break the fard prayer at all, unless it is completely binding. So, for example, you're praying, and this is actually a masala that some of them talk about in the books of fiqh. You're praying, and a person is dying, and he collapses next to you. What do? You carry on praying. If there is one person who's able to look after him, then the rest carry on. The imam carries on. If he needs more people from the saf, then they look after him. If he needs the whole congregation, then the whole, according to need. If the weather is hot, then they used to delay the prayer, the dhuhr prayer, until it used to cool down, because the heat is from the breaths of the hellfire. The prayer times are fixed, but it's permissible for you to delay the prayer if there is a need for you to do so. And that's for dhuhr, that's for isha, and that's for any prayer, maghrib prayer, etc., if there is a need for you to do so, fajr, etc. Whoever forgets a prayer, who genuinely forgets, or who sleeps, or misses it for a legitimate reason, what does he have to do? As soon as he remembers, he has to pray. Does he have to pray in order? Yes. Is there a kafara? Is there an expiation? Is there istighfar? Is there optional prayers that he needs to do? No. Because Allah has forgiven a person who is forgetfulness. Allah has forgiven forgetfulness. Allah has forgiven mistakes. Allah has forgiven people when they're unconscious. And Allah has forgiven those people who have missed it due to a genuine reason. And this is from the mercy of Allah. And the ulama have also explained that this is something exclusive to this ummah that the other ummah did not have. And we should thank Allah for this. And this is very important. Right? It's very easy now, if you have an appointment, for example, in a hospital, it's going to take 2-3 hours. You could miss Dhuhr, Asr and Maghrib all in one go. And you can't move because they're doing tests. It's possible, and that's actually happened to people that I know. They've missed prayers. So now they felt guilty, they felt bad. what can you do? You can't leave, you can't move. So either you combine, or you're making qada separately outside. Whoever slept or overslept, then he just needs to pray when he remembers. 122, on the authority of Jabir ibn Abdullah, that Mu'adh used to pray the Isha prayer with the Prophet ﷺ, and then he used to go back and lead his own people in prayer. What's the dalil for? What's this proof for? Yeah, Faisal.
The Imam doesn't have to have the same intention.
The same intention is not necessary, because Mu'adh used to pray the Isha with the Prophet ﷺ, and he used to go back and lead them again in prayer, and his intention would be for nafil. On the authority of Anas, so now what we learn from this is that you could be praying Asr behind somebody who's praying Dhuhr. Or you could be praying Dhuhr behind somebody who's praying Asr. You could be praying Maghrib behind somebody who's praying Isha. It's possible, yeah.
So, imagine if you're praying Sunnah prayers after Maghrib and someone joins you.
Yeah.
Prayer. Do you start reading aloud? Or do you just
In that scenario, you should jest them away. Yeah, because the rawatib cannot be... This is not a ratib. And the ulama agreed that rawatib can never be prayed in congregation. It's not possible. Nafil is different. So if you're praying tahiyyah, then that's different. On the authority of Anas ibn Malik, who said, we used to pray with the Prophet ﷺ and it was extremely hot, and our foreheads couldn't touch the ground, so we used to get a piece of garment from our own clothing and make sujood on it. What do we learn from that? The head doesn't have to physically be touching the ground. It can be a barrier, a small barrier. Now, the ulama have also talked about foreheads on the ground here, is that whatever your head is resting on, whether it's the ground directly, whether it's the earth directly, or if it's a mat, then your head has to be settled on the ground. So now we have, even in Saudi Arabia, some prayer mats they call them smart prayer mats. And they are quite thick and they are foamy. So now when you're praying, it's good for your feet, it's good for your knees, it's very good. But when you're making sujood, if you have to settle in, and then you become settled. If you go down and you don't settle in, if you're not conscious to it, and you say Subhana Rabbil A'la just once, then your sajda would not be valid. Because if your head is still moving in that foaming, and it's not settled, then that sujood is not valid. Also we learn from this, is that the companions used to, it's makruh, for you to make sujood on something which you are wearing or connected to. So Mai's got a scarf on, it's wrapped around him. If he puts his scarf on the ground and makes sajda on it, that's makruh. Why do you think that would be makruh? It is part of your garment. I'm saying it's part of your garment. Say if he has a jacket on, like he's got a jacket on, and he took his sleeve off, but he's still wearing it, and he makes sajda on his sleeve. Why would that be makruh? Because number one, you won't be balanced. Number two, especially at that time, you could compromise your clothing and your aura. Number three, it might offset you. It might offset you if you're getting up and you're putting clothes. But this is done out of necessity and if there is a need. Yeah.
It's really busy, but on Hajj, when you go around to sujood, there's no space. It's really tight, and literally like, when people go into sujood, and this small gap, you can't literally put your forehead there. Be able to just gesture as much as you can.
In that scenario, then you go down as much as you can. Yeah, what can you do? Yeah.
So what happens if you do sajda on tippy?
But your head's not touched the ground. What do you mean? Your hat, this hat? Or you mean the beak? This is fine. This is very important because some people pray and they wear their hats like this. Yeah, especially the hat like Hassan's wearing. They make it cover their eyebrows. And even sisters, for example, their forehead doesn't touch the ground. It's something else that's touching the ground. Part of your forehead the skin has to touch the ground. Part of your forehead has to touch the ground. So if my hat was like this, half covered forehead and half not, then is that fine or not? That's fine because my forehead is going to touch the ground. But if it's completely covered, then I've not touched the ground with my forehead.
That's what he says, isn't it?
What's that?
They put something because it was hot. They put something.
If there's a need, that's fine. Yeah.
Some, for example, in Syria, they have the sutra and it's quite big and it's very unlikely that the forehead would.
No, it does. Yeah, it does. In actual fact, what they do in Saudi is they wear the shamag, and what they do is the ends of the shamag, before they go into sujood, they flick it so it's there, and then they make like that, and then what they do is they will do the sajda on their own shimag. And that happens a lot, and it has to be done quite a lot, unfortunately. Yes, sister? Yes, that's what happened. Jabir narrated that Mu'adh, he used to go to the Prophet ﷺ's masjid, he used to pray Isha behind the Prophet ﷺ with the intention of praying Isha with the Prophet ﷺ. He wouldn't go there with the intention of praying Nafil, number one. And why would you go into Masjid Nabawi and pray behind the Prophet ﷺ with the intention other than being led by the Prophet ﷺ in the obligatory prayer? So, what he did is he used to go to the masjid, he used to pray Isha with the intention of praying Isha, he used to go back to his people, and he used to lead his people because he knew the most Quran, etc. And he was the appointed Imam. As we know from the other hadith, he told Mu'adh, what did he tell Mu'adh? In the other hadith of recitation, where are we? Here, 110. It's the same person. He told Mu'adh, and it's same Jabir narrating as well. He told Mu'adh, when you go back to your people and you lead them in prayer, recite Sabbihisma, wal-Shamsi, wal-Layl, wal-Duha, wal-Adiyat, and all these medium to small mufassal. So when he used to lead his people in prayer, he used to have the intention of nafil. 1, 2, 3. Okay, we've done that. 1, 2, 4. Abu Hurairah said, the Prophet ﷺ said, none of you should pray in one garment that has nothing on his shoulders. And this is connected to what we've just said. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 4. That your aura should not be exposed, your balance shouldn't be exposed. You should be praying in the best way in front of your Lord, etc. 1, 2, 5. Whoever has eaten onions or garlic or leek, then he shouldn't pray in our masjid. And the Prophet ﷺ was then brought a pot with vegetables in it, and he found some leek. He asked, people were suggesting that he shouldn't eat, and the Prophet ﷺ told him to eat. But he said, I do not want to eat it, but you can eat from it. It's not haram. And Umar radiallahu anh, there's another narration which says that this is raw onion, raw garlic, and raw leek. If it's been cooked, then that is fine. If it's been cooked, then that is fine. But, I mean, you could grill an onion, and it could be semi-cooked. So if you've still got that smell, then that would still be disliked. But if it's been completely killed off, the smell and the potency, then that's fine. Okay, so this is makruh. What do we learn from this? It's makruh for you to smell badly, to look badly, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 4. 1, 2, 5, to smell badly. All in all, present yourself badly when you go into the masjid. Allah is telling us, خُذُوا زِينَتُكُمْ. Take your adornments. The most time is not when you're going to work. I'm not saying that this is not good, but the most effort that you should have is when you go into the masjid. When you're standing in front of your Lord. When you're standing at home in front of your Lord. Present yourself nicely. Some of the Salaf, they used to wear misk and they used to brush their teeth even when they were at home. How many of us do that now? On the authority of Jabir ibn Abdullah, that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, okay, same hadith, that these things offend the malaika. If they offend the malaika, then how are they going to make dua for you whilst you're making dua? We know that when you pray for salah, the malaika are supplicating for you. Tashahhud. This is the Tashahhud of Ibn Mas'ud, and this is the one that is relied upon. At-Tahiyyat. What's the meaning of Tahiyyat? Say it every day. You know what Tahiyyat means? Praise. Yeah, Faisal.
Is it like all goodness?
All good praises in speech belong to Allah. كل التعظيمات. Tahiyyat, the ulama have said, refers to ta'zimat. What's salawat? Dua, tayyibat, athkar. Dua and athkar. Good words and prayers, this is what it means. So now what we learn from this, and we talked about this in Hisnul Muslim also, that your dua is a general word. Some of that dua is dua mas'ala, and some of it is dua ibadah. Dua ibadah, which is known as dhikr, what we refer to as dhikr. So when you say subhanallah, alhamdulillah, that's dua. And that's where we're saying here, at-tayyibat. And the salawat are the dua which when you are asking for Allah, or you're asking for something. Assalamu alaikum, ya Nabi wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum. What's the salam upon the Prophet? What does that mean? What does it mean? Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. What's the sallam bit? Alayhi salam. What does that mean? Peace. But what does that mean? Peace be upon him. What does that mean? Elevate your status. Allah protect you. Allah protect your honor. Allah protect your sunnah. This is what it means to mean as-salam. Assalamu alayka. And this is also the same meaning of when we say salam to each other. Shall I give you a gift? Okay, so now we have the Durood Ibrahimiyya. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And this is what we would recite in our prayer. And before we end the prayer, we make supplication. And this is the well-known one where the Prophet ﷺ used to seek refuge from 4 things. And this is the one of Abu Bakr, which is quite common. Allahumma inni zalamtu nafsi dhulman kathira. And what he used to say between the sajdatain was Subhanakallah. This is what he used to say in the sujood, Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, Allahumma gfirli. And he used to say that also in his ruku'. Witr. What's the meaning of witr? Odd. So how many odd do we have? 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Do we have 11? Some of the ulama said there is 11. Some of them said it is weak. We looked at that also. These are all different ways that you can pray. And if we had time in this revision session, we would talk about how you would pray each one. But let's talk about 3. How can you pray 3? You can pray 2 and 1, or you can pray 3 altogether. Do we sit once or twice? Once. Can we pray 5 in one go? When do we sit? Just in the 5th. Can we pray 7 in one go? When do we sit? 6 and 7. Can we pray 9 in one go? When do we sit? 8 and 9. And if you're going to pray 11, 10 and 11. That will become your shafa and then your watr. How should we perform the prayer? The Prophet ﷺ, and this is the asl. This is what the majority of ulama have said. This is the best way. 2, 2, 2, 2, and then 1. 1 is the best one because this is what the Prophet ﷺ has indicated here.
If I'm praying 3, I don't sit down on the second.
You don't sit down. You pray 3 all in one go. The Prophet ﷺ used to perform the witr every night, and sometimes used to be in the beginning, sometimes used to be in the middle, and sometimes used to be at the end. And there's no harm in any of those. And the Prophet ﷺ used to pray 13 raka'at every single night. And here's the proof that witr, which is hadith number 134, can be more than 1, can be more than 3, it can be 5, etc. And it could be more. And we looked at that when we were studying it. Part of the witr is that the witr itself has to be legislated. Can you pray 15 witr? No dalil. But when we're talking about the salawat that come before, the nawafil, before the witr, does that have to be restricted in number or it doesn't have to be? The correct opinion, we've talked about this also, it doesn't have to be. Some of them say, no, the Prophet ﷺ prayed 13 and he didn't exceed 13. If you exceed 13, then that's a bid'ah. In Taraweeh or outside of Taraweeh, that's a bid'ah. But the correct opinion with the majority of the Salaf, the majority of the companions also themselves, they used to pray more or even less than 13. So this is the point here, is that the night prayer is sunnah, is nafil. And there is no limit. But when it comes to the witr, then it can only be 1 to 9. And if we say 11 is sahih, then 11 is sahih. But me personally, I believe 1 to 9. Dhikr made after salah. What do you do after salah then? Once salah is finished, what should we do? Make dua. Make dhikr. How do we make dhikr? We say subhanallah 33 times. Alhamdulillah 33 times. And takbir 33 times. And then we end with this supplication. La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu. Or you can do takbir 34 times. How do we say subhanallah, alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar? Do we do it separately? You should say subhanallah, subhanallah, alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. You can. Or you can say subhanallah, alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar. Subhanallah, alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar. Subhanallah, alhamdulillah. And that way you do that 33 times. It's also narrated that the Prophet ﷺ had this supplication. لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له الملك وله الحمد ولا كل شيء قدير اللهم لا مانع لما أتيت ولا مؤتي لما منعت ولا ينفع ذا الجد منك الجد اللهم أنت السلام ومنك السلام. You need to make istighfar 3 times. And all of these, you will find them in Hisn al-Muslim. And here now we're talking about the tasbih and how it is virtuous. And we looked at the virtue also. But also we have in 138, where the Prophet ﷺ was talking about what he did after the prayer. As soon as he finished the prayer, he said, take this garment back to Abu Jahm. It says Abu Jahl, that's wrong. It's Abu Jahm. Because he's distracted me in my prayer. So now, is it permissible for you to talk after the prayer, or is this dhikr wajib? It's permissible for you to talk, which shows us that it's not wajib. Because the Prophet ﷺ, straight after the prayer, he talked and he didn't do the dhikr. And what we learn from this also is that if there is a reason for you to talk or to do something, then you can do that, that's fine. And then you can make your dhikr after that, and it's still considered as you doing it after the salat, as long as it's not been a lengthy gap. Combining prayers whilst travelling and shortening the prayers. When do we combine the prayers? Can we combine when we're resident or not when we're resident? If we are resident, when do we do it when we're resident? If you're sick, if there is fear, or bad weather. This is what the majority said. Sick, fear, bad weather. But the Hanabila have said, no. All three of these have one thing in common, which is difficulty. If there is difficulty, mushaqqah, then you can combine. Doesn't matter. So now, can you combine Maghrib and Isha in the summer? Majority ulama, there's no sickness, there's no fear, and there's no weather. No, you can't. The Hanabila, yeah, there's difficulty. I can't stay till 11:30 and wake up again at 7 o'clock to go, 6 o'clock to go to work. It's too difficult. So in that scenario, it doesn't become your thumb rule, but if today you are really tired, you've got a headache, and it's 9:30, you just want to pray Maghrib and go to sleep, pray Maghrib Isha, go to sleep. That is when you are resident. What about when you are travelling? Can you combine your prayers? You can combine your prayers when? Whilst you're en route or not en route? Anytime. You can combine your prayers anytime, whether you're en route, whether you're not en route. As soon as you've left your city, you can combine until you have come back. Is there a distance? The majority say 46 miles, 80-something kilometers. But the correct opinion is that as soon as you've left the city, you've not seen the buildings or the buildings that are connected to the buildings of that city, then you have left your city. What do you shorten? Can I shorten Maghrib? No. Can I shorten Fajr? No. You shorten 4 to 2. That's it. Can I shorten if I'm resident? No. You can only shorten if you're travelling. The Jumu'ah prayers. Is Jumu'ah wajib or not? Wajib. Even if you hear the adhan or you don't hear the adhan? Wajib. Still wajib. Whether you hear the adhan or don't hear the adhan, you have to pray. But the only time when it is not wajib is if there is fear, if there is sickness, or if you don't live inside the city. If you, for example, live, I don't know, where can you live? Somewhere far away outside the city, I don't know, I can't think of anything right now. Ashby Zuj or something. But that's not even a city. I mean, like a complete remote area. You're not connected to the city. Then, in that scenario, you would not pray Jummah. But if there's enough for you to pray Jummah, what's the minimum for Jummah? 3. If there's 3 of you, then you would make your own Jummah. Whoever comes to Jummah, then he must take a bath. Is that fard or is that sunnah? So what do we learn? The Prophet ﷺ has said to us that we should come in a nice way, we should come early, we should look at our perfume, our clothing and all of that. What does that teach us? We should take Jum'ah very seriously and we should come in our best attire and in our best appearance. The khutbah, the Prophet ﷺ used to deliver the khutbah twice. So he used to sit, he used to say salam, sit, give the first khutbah, sit, and that's the hadith here of Ibn Umar. And the hadith of Jabir, the Prophet ﷺ saw a man praying and he didn't pray the 2 before he sat down. And he told him to sit and pray. Pray and then sit. And this teaches us that the khutbah is something which is very important. The Imam must deliver it. But if the Imam needs to speak to the congregation or the congregation needs to speak to the Imam, then they are allowed to speak. But they're not allowed to speak to one another. If they spoke to one another, 144. So 143 and 144 is connected. 143, the Imam is speaking to the follower. Or the follower, like we've seen from the istisqa, is talking to the Imam. That's fine. If they're speaking to one another, then they have no Jumu'ah. They have no reward for Jumu'ah. Although that the Jumu'ah is correct. They pray Jumu'ah, but they have no reward for it. So that's 144. You're not allowed to speak to one another. 145 is, again, this is connected to what we've just talked about taking it seriously, coming early and seeking the reward and seeking the dhikr and seeking the dua and the blessings of that day. 146 of the hadith of Salam bin Aqwa, that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to lead us in Jumu'ah prayer and then he used to leave and there was no shadow. What does that teach us? As soon as Zawal hits, you should pray at its earliest time. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the morning of Jumu'ah, he used to pray the sajda and the insan. And again, this is connected to the adorning of the day because he used to start the day by reminding people of Yawm al-Qiyamah. If you believe in Yawm al-Qiyamah, listen to these ayat. Let it affect you. Go home and get ready for the Jumu'ah. Because that's when it's going to happen. These ayat are going to happen on Yawm al-Jumu'ah. The last hadith of Jumu'ah here is the Prophet ﷺ prayed on top of the prayer, on top of the minbar here, and he led the people in prayer. And it's permissible for the Imam to come up and go down, and the people to look, and the people to interact with the Imam whilst he's on the minbar. And one of the Mashaykh, I remember, he did the ayah of tilawah, and he got down and he made sajda, and people were like, they didn't know what to do. Some of them made sajda, some of them kind of clicked on afterwards, then they made sajda also, and then he got back up and he started giving his khutbah again. In the khutbah. Chapter of the two Eids, of Eid al-Adha and Eid al-Fitr. Do we have a khutbah? What do we start with? Khutbah or salat? The salat. So the Imam comes out and he does how many takbirat? 7, including the ihram. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, then the Fatiha, and then in the second rak'ah we'll have 5. After that, we will have the khutbah. Well, the fitr, is it better for us to hasten it or to delay it? Delay it. The adha, hasten. Why? So that we can quickly do the sacrifice afterwards. What about the fitr? Why are we delaying it? So you can have breakfast, you can see your family, you can congratulate them, you can meet them, you can get out of i'tikaf, you can get ready. The Prophet ﷺ gave khutbah, and this is the hadith here, and in this he's telling us that the udhiyah has to be done after the salat, could be before the khutbah, but after the salat. That is when you're udhiyah. And we looked at some of the conditions of the udhiyah, etc. And the best day with Allah is the day of Nahr, and this is the day when the Prophet ﷺ used to lead them in prayer. If the Imam is giving the khutbah, as we see in 152, in an open musalla, he gives one khutbah, no mimbar. But if he's delivering it in the masjid, then it will be normal. 153, the Prophet ﷺ commanded even women to go out, even menstruating girls to come out, even the youngest of girls to come out, because this is a day of congregation, a day of happiness, day of blessing, day of Eid. 2 more chapters, or I think 3 more chapters. Eclipse prayer. What is eclipse? When the sun and the moon meet. That's kind of not, it's too general. The ulama have defined the eclipse prayer is when the light of the sun or the moon is eclipsed by the other. So that could be a full, like you're saying, a full eclipse like that, or it could be a partial eclipse like that, and then it goes down again. In that scenario, you pray the eclipse prayer. What do we do when you see the eclipse prayer?
You don't announce it, you straight away start.
Salat al-Jama'ah. There was a call, Salat al-Jama'ah. So they will go out and Salat al-Jama'ah. There is no announcement for the Eid prayers, but for the eclipse prayer, Salat al-Jama'ah. There's no Iqamah, there is no Adhan. How do we pray the eclipse prayer? How many rakat is it? 2. But each rak'ah has 2 rukus. So how does that look? Allahu Akbar, Alhamdu, Baqarah, Allahu Akbar, Subhana Rabbil Azim. Extremely long, because remember we're talking about ratios here. So it's not a ruku which is worth 283 or 286 ayats. It's a long ruku. So if it's taken you 2 hours to stand, maybe half an hour in ruku. Then he got up again and he recited equivalent to Al Imran. That's the first rak'ah gone. Then he did that for both. Now, if a person has walked in and the Imam is reciting Imran now, has he met the rak'ah? He missed the first ruku, but he's going to get the second ruku. Has he got the rak'ah? No. You have to catch the first ruku to get the rak'ah. But those rukus are sunnah. So if you had to make up a prayer, or if you are praying and you forgot, then those are sunnah, and it's not wajib. Ibn Mas'ud, the Prophet ﷺ said that these are the signs from the signs of Allah, and he reminds his servants by it, so take this seriously. And this is how the day of judgment will also begin. And here, this is the hadith of Aisha, where she was gesturing to her sister. And what we learn from this is how the Prophet ﷺ made this prayer extremely lengthy. And afterwards, there was a short khutbah that he gave and he delivered, and he reminded the people of staying away from shirk and staying away from major sins, and giving istighfar and making dhikr. This is the eclipse. Istisqa. What's the meaning of istisqa? Seeking rain. When there is a drought, seeking rain. The istisqa is exactly like the Eid prayer. He came out, 7 takbirat, first rak'ah. Second rak'ah, 5 takbirat. Afterwards is a khutbah. But this khutbah is slightly different because in the khutbah itself, he turned around his jacket and he turned it around, or his rida, whatever he's wearing on top, if he's able to take it off and turn it around, and he started making dua. And then he turned around and he made dua with the congregation. Then he turned around and made dua by himself. And we learned from this also how there are different ways of stretching your hands and putting your hands out when you are making dua. If it rains, what do we do when it rains? We make the dua, we make the supplication. Like we see heavy rain, we make supplication also. It doesn't stop there once you've asked for the drought and the drought has been relieved. Once Allah makes it rain, if it is heavy rain, if it is light rain, all of those scenarios have also been documented and we also studied. And we also learned from the istisqa, the proof of the Prophet ﷺ being an actual messenger and the existence of Allah, and we looked at that also. How is it that the Prophet ﷺ made dua and Allah made that come true straight away? And it stayed in that state. And then he made dua again and it got removed again. That is more than coincidence. So we know, like we've seen from our Wasatiyah classes, that the proof of Allah can be, one of the ways we know is that through the connection and the dua that a person has in establishing the existence of a Lord. Salatul Khawf, the last chapter. When do we pray Salatul Khawf? State of war and fear. So you can't establish the prayer by yourself. Now this is very, very important. How many people take the ahkam of war and the ahkam of even what we just saw now, violence and pushing your brother aside, and they misinterpret it and they misapply it. It's very important that we take what we understand from the way of the Salaf. So you can't establish this khawf in your house. You can't establish, it's very scary outside. So I'm just going to pray 1 rak'ah and I'm going to move around, just go make a cup of tea and then come back and so go check the window, see if everything's okay. And that's how it is. Salatul Khawf, the ahkam of jihad, the ahkam of all of these things come in its proper context. And the Prophet ﷺ has explained to us here, and the ulama have said that there's more than 8 or 9 different ways of establishing the khawf prayer. And one of them is found in Surah An-Nisa, where the people, they stand, and other people, so there's different rows, and we have them in even numbers. So the people praying behind the imam would pray, and they would stay on guard. Then they will turn, and these lot would stay on guard, and these will continue praying. The imam would balance his prayer in half, whether he's resident or travelling. If he's travelling, then he would stop at the halfway mark after 1 rak'ah. Or if he's resident and he's sitting at the tashahhud, then he would stand and we would pray with them. So that's one way. Another way is where they are standing like this, and these people are guarding. And these people pray 1 rak'ah, and they finish for themselves, and then he's waiting, and then they come. That's another way. Another way is where they are praying with the imam, and they've just prayed 1 rak'ah, and then they go, and they completely cut their prayer off. These guys come, and they pray. And then they go and they completely cut the prayer off, and these guys come, and then they pray another rak'ah, completely separate to the first one, but this imam has prayed 2, and they've prayed 2. That's a third way. Another way is when they take rows. They can swap. I think we just talked about that. But there's other ways that you can establish the prayer of the khawf, and there are roughly about 8 or 9. One of them is when you're praying by yourself. If you have to pray by yourself sitting, that is an example of praying Salatul Khawf. If you are not able to pray sitting, so you're surrounded by people who want to try and harm you, and the only way you can, look at this, you still have to pray. And the only way you can pray is if I say sitting here, then they won't see me, I can sit here praying, or lying down. Then you pray in that state. Or you're walking through, and it's the time for salat, and you're trying to defend yourself. You still have to pray. But you pray using your head and you make your ishara. This is the end of Umdah al-Ahkam for this semester. It's not the end of the book. I ask Allah to give us iman and life that we are able to continue this in year 2, semester 1, where we will be studying Fath al-Majid, bi'idhnillah, and the next section of this book, which is then from 163 until around about 300. And in that we will be looking at janazah, how to do the janazah. We'll be looking at Sawm, we'll be looking at zakat, we'll be looking at hajj, we'll be looking at interest, and we'll be looking at interest as in riba, and we'll be looking at some of the Islamic financial issues. And bi'idhnillah, we'll be also looking at Fath al-Majid. But this is the last lesson for this semester, and we will start again in January the 7th and the 8th, as you can see on the board. 7th and 8th, there won't be any lessons, but there will be an exam. And on the 7th we will do wasatiyah, and on the 8th we'll do Umdah al-Ahkam. And the way we're going to do this is I'm going to give you the exam, I'm not going to mark it myself, you're going to mark it yourself. So what we'll do is we'll discuss the answers together. And I think that would be better as feedback on the spot. 7th we'll do wasatiyah. It's going to be mixed, it's going to be multiple, and it's going to be, filling in and all those kind of things. And on the 8th we're going to do Umdah al-Ahkam. Depending on how many questions, depending on how long we have, I don't know with the salah times, etc. Roughly about 20 questions. I think that should be enough. Umdah might be a bit more. But then from the 14th and 15th, every Monday and Tuesday we'll be doing seerah until the course finishes, which is January, February, March, until the last week of April, which I believe will be the 23rd. And then Ramadan, I think, starts here, which is the 2nd or the 3rd of May. So ask Allah to give us iman and tawfiq. And if you have any questions, feel free to get in touch with me in these 2 weeks. هذا والله أعلم صلى الله على نبينا محمد آله وصحبه أجمعين. Sami, you got a question? No. Okay. Yes.
What about if someone's like a prisoner?
Right. That's not Salat al-Khawf. That's praying in the sense, that's praying in the hal of khawf. But that's not Salat al-Khawf. This is my point. Salat al-Khawf is when a person is in the battlefield, in a state of fear, so then the pillars of Salah will be he'll be able to manipulate those things. If he is resident, there is no actual khawf, but he's got fear of one person, then what he'd need to do is pray in a situation where that person is not around. That's all.
Or like if he can't, just pray like sitting down.
Pray sitting down. Combine firstly. Pray in its proper time. If not, then combine. If not, then pray sitting. Yeah. But that's not khawf. Barakallah feek. Jazakallah khair. Barakallah feek. Yeah. For Jummah. Yes. They have to be balik. Yes. Yes. Because the ulama are agreed. If you pray alongside a child, then that's not one of the pillars. Yeah. Barakallah feek. How's things?